Hello, Chick Chang back with another summary, this time on Halo Flood. Or as most may know it, it's basically Halo 1 or Combat Evolved. However, there's more to the story than what the game shows. From the other humans in the story to the Covenant point of view, even a particular elite that is hunting down John 117 throughout the story. If you haven't seen the previous videos or read the books, I recommend checking them out. They'll be in the description below. Let's begin. We start with the Pillar of Autumn, which had just escaped from Reach into Slipspace to get away from the Covenant. Tech Officer Sam Marcus, who just woke up from a 3-hour sleep cycle, gets down to Cryo 2. Sam is then sent the upload to his terminal, and after entering the required codes, his adrenaline spiked through his exhaustion, and asks if it's who we think it is in Cryo. Shepard confirms, and Sam gets down to Cryo as soon as he can. If Captain Keyes wanted the Spartan awoken from Cryo, that means the situation was about to get worse, if it hadn't already. Next, we meet a Covenant Sangheili shipmaster, Orna Fulsami, who is scanning his data projections, one being the Ringworld, Halo, and the other being the human ship. He then fights Revulsion because these humans had the audacity to name their own ships, and then named their race and other races of the Covenant. He eventually regained his composure because it was what the prophets had named these humans and their ships. Wouldn't want to be heretical. A minor prophet had been near Fulsami, with a Sangheili assistant named Bako Ikapurami, who addressed him on the prophet's behalf, telling Fulsami that the humans had gotten there to the Ringworld by accident, and not by following another Covenant vessel. When Fulsami responds, questioning that they just got there by chance, Bako said no, because they are sentient beings, they are attracted to the glory of the ancients' truth and knowledge. Which, if it was true, you'd think they'd be allowed to join, right? No. Either way, Fulsami didn't believe humans could be drawn here, but didn't argue any further. When he tries to fire plasma torpedoes at the human vessel, he is told that he can't, because it would cause damage to the Ringworld, since they were too close to it. Instead, he has sent boarding parties to take over the ship, causing many in his command to die, which was just fine by the Prophet because they will just transcend the physical and join the journey. Aboard the Pillar of Autumn, Captain Jacob Keyes was dealing with Covenant attacks on his ship, which had already taken a beating at Reach. It was astounding that the ship was even still, functioning at this point. Seraph fighters had been attacking the ship. UNSC longsword fighters were trying to fight them off, but not to really any avail. Lieutenant Hikawa warned Keyes that the inbound ships were prepping to board, but he tells her it was only a matter of time. Keyes then asks Cortana what this Ringworld is. She tells him that it's a 10,000 kilometer diameter ring that's 22 kilometers thick, but it doesn't seem to be Covenant made, and the Covenant had followed them there, meaning they failed to lose their pursuers. Cortana also tells Keyes that it's an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and Earth normal gravity, yet she still can't tell him what it is, so Keyes decides they have to go down and find out. Sam lets Shepard know that John should be waking up soon, now in REM cycle, dreaming about something given the brain activity. Shepard calls the bridge to get past a security lock, which Cortana gives them the code for, then they unseal the cryopod. Before being unsealed, John has a familiar dream, a nice dream outside of war, back on Eridanus 2, his home planet. A female voice calls to him by name. A haze obscured her face, but he was able to see large eyes, a straight nose, and full lips. However, it had changed in a blink to a woman with dark hair, blue eyes, and pale skin. He knew this woman as Dr. Halsey. A dark figure had shown up in the back of this mother/Halsey figure, and he knew it was a threat. His instincts kicked in, and he was ready to fight. He ran to an assault rifle to fight this beast, but it was impossibly fast. When he tries to lift the weapon, he is unable to because he doesn't have the strength. His arms became small, armor gone, and, had the body of a 6-year-old. He had now been powerless. When becoming angry at this sudden fact, he hears a male voice calling out to him. Shepard wakes him up and apologizes for the quick thaw, which, in hindsight, was probably nice for him, but it was hectic at the moment. They start going through tests, making sure that there's no issues, until Keyes calls down telling them that they need John on the bridge. Shepard tells them that they will get weapons later, but explosions echoed on the bay. The Covenant had been trying to get through the doors. Sam tried to get to the alarm, but the door had blasted open. He felt something punch him in the chest, and then he felt it. He had blood on his hands. He tried to reach for the picture of his wife that fell, and an elite stepped on his arm and picked it up, then shot Sam in the head with the plasma rifle. John wanted to engage the Covenant, but he had orders to get to the bridge, so he and Shepard headed that way. Unfortunately, once in the hallway, a door explodes and kills Shepard, leaving him to find his own way there. John pushes forward to the bridge, helped by some Marines along the way, especially when he runs into an elite and they just mow it down for him. He gets to the bridge and sees the ring structure in the background. Keyes tells him it's good to see him, but the battle's not going well for, the humans here. Even with Cortana directing the weapons, they were able to destroy 4 Covenant ships, but it wasn't enough. So Keyes tells John he wants him to take Cortana and keep her safe from the Covenant, while he works on landing the Autumn on the surface of Halo. John is given Keyes his pistol, along with Cortana, and he takes off for a lifeboat, killing any Covenant that get in his way. John had worked his way to the lifeboat. killing, pretty much obviously anything that gets in his way, helping Marines along the way when he could. Once he got to the lifeboat, just before boarding, a Marine trips and falls right in front of it. So John picks him up and lobs him in before joining himself, and then they make their way to the ring. John asks Cortana what it is, but once again, Cortana doesn't know. She just knows that the Covenant call it Halo, and for them, it's going to be known as home for a while. Back on the bridge, Keyes and his crew had gotten everything on the ship set for landing, and were on their way out as well. Once to their lifeboat, they boarded and were on their way to the surface as well, not knowing that they had an extra life form on board. Turns out that this life form is an elite named Isna Nosuli, which when he had boarded the Autumn, he boarded as an Osuna, or an Eye of the Prophet. Since the Sangheili were very destructive most of the time in battle, the Prophets were unable to have anything analyzed for more information, so sending Nosuli in stealth to gather information could prove vital. His mission was to try to capture a human AI, get any human leaders, and to film his actions via headcam. He didn't see any honor in this mission, but he did see why it was necessary. He had made his way through the ship undetected, reaching the bridge, obviously, and avoided detection by Captain Keyes, who thought he saw something, but after rubbing his eyes and looking again, he didn't see anything, so he just went back to trying to land the ship. Nosuli had figured out that he was the captain, or the shipmaster as they call it, because of how everyone else around had, treated him. And he wanted to capture him since obviously the AI was probably long gone by now. So he lied in wait, waiting for his opportunity to take him alive without being killed by the other humans. Unfortunately for him, once on the lifeboat, Keyes notices the elite's cloaking. So he casually asks a Marine for his pistol. He then shoots the elite 3 times, killing him where he stands, while pretty much everyone else is in shock. Keyes just hands the pistol back to the Marine and thanks him, which is pretty badass. Among the other important humans leaving the Pillar of Autumn, Major Antonio Silva was the leader of the Helljumpers, or ODSTs, and they were heading down in their HEVs from the Autumn, so they could get a start on finding a place to fortify up and bring the fight back to the Covenant. Along with Silva, there was a dumb AI named Wellesley, who was telling him about a location they could use. Wellesley was named after the Duke of Wellington, and his personality matched it. Even told Silva that they could name the fortress after the place that he took over in India. However, this just frustrates Silva, telling him that, he didn't take anything because he's just an AI and blah 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 blah. So he tells him that Alpha Base is just fine. Wellesley tells him that the only problem with this plan is that they will have to take it from the Covenant, which is no big deal in Silva's eyes. When the chutes start opening on the HEVs, it puts a lot of force on whoever's inside, but slows down the drop pods so they, can survive the landing. Unfortunately for Private Maria, Postly, her chute malfunctions and sends her crashing to the surface. Her mic is cut by Silva after she starts screaming in order to avoid causing any issues with the others on their way down, since this is the main fear of any ODSTs. The last set of humans trying to make their way off the Pillar of Autumn are the actual pilots that take the Pelicans. The main one being Flight Officer Captain Raleigh, or as many know her as, Foehammer. She decided that her and the other pilots should get to the Pelicans and extract out, obviously, killing a few Covenant along their way, even though they're not really warriors per se. With the Pelicans, Raleigh thought that they stood a better chance on the ground, assuming that others made it as well, because they will have air support, which makes fighting on the ground a lot easier for infantry. She also happens to be the one that, picks up the Master Chief all the time. From a different point of view, there's a grunt named Yayap, who had boarded the ship with other grunts to attack the humans they came in contact with. Seeing many peers dead, he didn't want to be there long if he didn't have to be. Fortunately for him and his squad, they found an elite that was still alive, and he talked the others into getting him off the ship, which would, get them off as well. So they carried him back to the dropship and demanded to be taken back to the main ship. Once back on the Covenant ship, Yayap was awoken from his nap later on by another grunt because the elite that they had saved was there to see him. Yayap was going to get his armors and weapons, but decided that being quick was better than trying to be presentable, since elites tended not to have much patience. However, it probably wouldn't have mattered. The elite's name was Zukuzamami, and he was there to add Yayap to his unit as an assistant since his assistant was killed during the boarding of the Autumn. Yayap was not a fan of this, however, because he liked the easy unit he was part of that didn't really do much, so he was safer. But he wasn't going to argue with an elite. Zamami then told him that he was to accompany him to the meeting with the Prophet about a mission to hunt down the human wearing special armor, John of course, who was single-handedly responsible for thousands of Covenant deaths, probably higher than that, and who was responsible for his actual injury on the Autumn. Once on the ground, Silva and his second-in-command, Lieutenant McKay, had gathered up with the other Helljumpers and Marines. Silva told her to take B Company and attack the Butte on foot, while C Company moved out to the Pelicans that would attack by air. She takes her men and moves out. While she was on her way, the Covenant attacked Silva with mostly ghosts and a few banshees later on in the fight. Silva was able to get companies A and D set up in an infantry square to repel and defend against the cavalry charge. Many of the ghosts get in each other's way at first, eager to get the first kill, but a gold elite eventually gets them in line, and they attack the weakest corner with the shallowest slope, since ghosts can't, really aim uphill unless they're on the hill themselves. Silva gets reinforcements there and repels the attack. The gold elite is eventually killed in the Covenant retreat. 23 Marines were killed, and 6 more had been injured. Just then, McKay had called in, telling Silva that they had the attention on the butte, which causes Silva to smile, and told her that help was on the way. John wakes up after crashing and seeing that everyone else on board was killed. Cortana warns him that the Covenant saw them come in and needs him to get out and hopefully get away without being seen. That way they could make it seem like everybody was killed. On his way up the hill, however, banshees in the sky see him, and he fires at one coming towards him, causing it to flee and smoking. The second one comes in, which causes John to hide. Once the first one comes back for another strafe, John is able to shoot it and cause it to crash into the cliffside. He then comes across some grunts flanking him from the left and the right, but the right side was much closer, so he engages them first, shooting 12 shots and killing 7 of them. Not bad. Then on to the left side and shoots at the farthest one, that way he made sure he could shoot the rest before they tried to escape. Satisfied that none of them have gotten away, he moved to the top of the hill and engaged an elite with 2 grunts, noticing late that there was another elite trying to flank him. But he was able to blow him up with a grenade and deal with the original elite, killing him with the assault rifle and cleaning up the grunts with ease. John realized that he had made a mistake by almost being blindsided by that elite. He was still acting as if he was part of a squad. He knew that he had to adjust his tactics if he wanted to make it through this. Pushing through, he hears automatic fire in the distance. Knowing it had to be some Marines, he started rushing toward the fight, knowing he may not be along much longer. Once he gets up the hill, killing a few more grunts and mowing down another elite, he meets up with Sergeant Johnson. They defend the area from Covenant dropships, killing more and more before Foehammer drops in to pick up the Marines. She drops off a Warthog for John and a Marine wanting to man the gun. Fitzgerald was the man's name, and he hopped in and they took off to go and try and save more Marines. John and Fitzgerald drive down a ramp into a tunnel underground that leads to other sections of the ring. Killing Covenant along the way, John gets to a point where he needs to get across a gap, but they need to find a way to activate some sort of bridge. John gets out and tries to push forward while Fitzgerald stays on the gun, but he's hit by a needler in the arm and it detonates, ripping his bicep apart. Chief gets to him after killing some grunts and treats the wound with biofoam. He wiped the sweat away and remanned the turret. Fitz is a pretty baller. After 15 more minutes killing the remaining Covenant in the area, Chief looks for a way to activate the bridge. He kills an elite near a panel and for some reason recognizes a symbol. After activating it, the bridge seems to be made of light. Cortana asks him how he knew what to press, but John has no idea. Once back in the Warthog, they make their way across it, and we're back on track to help the remaining Marines. They spend a better part of the day going from dropship to dropship, clearing out Covenant so Foehammer and the other Pelicans could fly in and extract them out and take them back to base. After the last group is picked up, John jumps on and flies back to Alpha Base with them, falling asleep on the way back. While John's doing all that, Silva arrived with the other Marines attacking the butte from the top while McKay and her company pushed up the path. After killing many Covenant along the way, McKay finally gets to the grav lift and it takes them up to the top of the butte. Silva and his company had taken over by then and meets up with McKay, welcoming her to Alpha Base, and obviously the main base that they use throughout this game/book. While all that's going on, Keyes and his crew had landed, scrapped what they could from the dropship, and went into the hills to evade the Covenant. Unfortunately, that didn't last long. Covenant Banshees were able to locate them fairly quickly. However, the humans were able to fend off multiple attempts to capture them because the Covenant soldiers were trying to capture them alive. Seeing the dead Asuna, they assumed he found someone of importance to board the alien craft. This put the Covenant at a disadvantage, not being allowed to kill the humans because they didn't know which one the leader was. Evading the Covenant was putting much stress on the group though. Pushing the boundaries of exhaustion, they were doing all they could not to get caught. Most of the crew was still fighting though, but Ensign Dowski was starting to be a problem, wanting to surrender so they won't meet harsher penalties, and they are wasting time preventing the inevitable. Keyes tells her that he's been in contact with Cortana, and it won't be long till an extraction will be on its way. But she's not down for that, since they could have just bombed them by now if they really wanted him dead. Lieutenant Hikawa tells her to shut up, and that it's stupid to think that they will be spared, since the Covenant never takes prisoners. Keyes does admit, not out loud, that it was odd that they were still alive, given that what Dowski said is kind of right. Keyes decides to have her tied up and left behind for the Covenant since she wants to surrender so badly, and they continue on. The Covenant eventually realize that they left one behind while pushing forward, and they go up and scoop her up. After being captured, Dowski uses a shipboard mic to tell Keyes it's time to give up since they are in a box canyon. The Covenant ship lands and Dowski walks down the ramp with a smirk on her face since she thinks she was right all along. The elites order the humans to drop their weapons, which they do. Then Dowski points out Keyes to an elite by her side. Hikawa threatens Dowski, but before finishing her sentence, the elite kills her. Keyes charges the elite, but to no avail, being knocked down and having to watch all his men and women killed. Dowski was the last one to be killed and apologized to Keyes before being killed. Keyes is then taken hostage, wishing he was among the others as well. At Alpha Base, John is doing a maintenance check on his armor. He's then told by a private that Major Silva wanted to see him, then told him that he's also to leave his armor. Not a huge fan of being without his armor in a war zone, but John knew that Silva was in charge until Keyes is back, so he does what he's ordered to do. John reports to Silva's office and is pestered by ODSTs that are on guard until Lieutenant McKay gets John through. Once inside, he salutes and reports to Silva, who doesn't tell him at ease, which is what they normally do. Silva tells John he wants to make sure that he knows that he's in charge, and until Keyes is back, since he was captured by the Covenant alive. If he or McKay tell him so much as to crap, he better ask how much and what color. Alrighty then. John understands and tells him that he does so, but Silva isn't done. He admits that he's seen his record and even admires it, telling him that he's one hell of a soldier, but that he's also a freak from a flawed experiment that should never be repeated. Then rips into the program itself and states that the Spartan project failed because of natural selection. There's so much wrong with that statement. Not only that Spartans were more successful than any other military branch in history, they could survive anything another human could survive and more, but Silva has a grudge that makes sense to a point, but that comes up later. He continues more, telling John that once he's gone, the Spartans will be over, and that the ODSTs will be the ones to win the war versus the Covenant. John thinks about his brothers and sisters, like Linda, Fred, Kelly, and other Spartans he had trained with, being called freaks and failures. When Silva asks if he reads him, John tells him no. Some silence occurs until Silva acknowledges that he understands being loyal to his own. He finally says at ease. They all sit down, and they plan to rescue Keyes from the Truth and Reconciliation. Speaking of the Truth and Reconciliation, Zamami was heading to the command deck of the ship to speak with the Prophet about a mission he would like to take on. All members of the Covenant would quickly move out of his way because of the confidence and authority that he walked with. However, no matter the rank you are, you have to be identified before entering the command deck. After being correctly identified, he had to wait to be seen, of all the others waiting to be seen as well. So he just chilled in a waiting room. After a long wait, he was finally called in and met with the Prophet and another Sangheili that was 2 full ranks above him. He states that he wants to go on this mission to attack the human in modified armor, because he is responsible for, once again, thousands of Covenant deaths, and when they are near other humans, they fight with renewed vigor. To which the elite Romilly says that it's true. The Prophet tells him to leave while they talk about what to do. When Zamami is then called back in, the Prophet rejects the mission because he believes the reports about this so-called human are battle-induced hysteria. And they believe that Zamami is too valuable an asset to waste on hunting one single human. Which he knows is just, bullshit, but he acknowledges and respects the attempt. So he leaves and Yayep sees that he's not walking with the same confidence and knew that the insane mission was rejected, which pleased him very much since he was not a fan of being put in danger. While leaving the command deck, Zamami froze when he saw 4 Kigyar dragging Captain Keyes from his 3rd interrogation. Zamami walked up to him and asked him where the human in special armor was. Keyes made eye contact with him and told him he didn't know, but next time he saw him, he should duck, noticing the bandage on his head. Zamami slapped him after that comment, and Keyes dares him to kill him. Tempted, but Zamami walks away, which stunned Yayep. The human had won. Heading toward the Truth and Reconciliation, Echo 419 was taking John and a group of ODSTs up to the cliffside, so John can clear away with his S2AM sniper rifle. Then the ODSTs will group up so they can take over the entrance location. After clearing that all out, they get ready to go up the beam as well. They enter the ship, and Cortana led them through to Keyes. Along the way, they get stuck in a room and have to battle waves of Covenant. The Marines dealing with the Ungoi and Kigyar quite well, while Master Chief focused on the Sangheili. A couple of hunters caused a huge problem at first, but were killed eventually. John realized that too much time was going by, so he told Sergeant Parker to hold position where they were while he went to find Keyes. Parker was going to protest, but decided it was best and told John just not to tell Silva, since, he'll get a little butthurt. John pushes through a few Covenant here and there and eventually finds Keyes inside a cell. After opening the cell, Keyes tells him it was reckless to come, but smiles and thanks him for doing it anyway. He asks if they know their way out since it's like a maze in this ship. John tells Keyes that they're just going to follow the dead bodies back. Once regrouped with the others, they push to the troop ship bay to board the dropship, since Foehammer couldn't get in to pick them up because Banshees were harassing her, unable to lose them. Along the way, Keyes tells them about the information he had heard during the interrogations and explains that Halo was some sort of weapon that the Covenant wanted to harness. whoever has control of Halo has control of the system. So he tells John and Cortana to go and find the command center of Halo. But John reminds him that they should probably finish the current mission they're on before taking out a new one, which makes sense. After boarding a U-shaped dropship, hunters come out on deck. Keyes kills both of them with glancing blows from the ship before taking off and heading back to Alpha Base. Zuka Zamami was brought back into the Truth and Reconciliation. Along the way, he saw that there had been damage done by the humans and was in shock. Most compartments were not touched, but the ones that had been were damn near destroyed. He gets to the command deck and thinks that he'll have to wait once again, but he is admitted immediately. The Prophet is not present, but Rolamy is. He asks Zamami if he has heard what happens, and shows him a video of 2 grunts and a jackal coming in contact with these armored human, John of course, who kills both grunts and is shot in the chest by the jackal, only to return fire and kill the jackal with a headshot. Zamami was in shock. This was the human, the one that had attacked him on the human ship, and the same human he wanted to hunt. Luckily for him, Rolamy tells him that the original request had been accepted. And that is where we will leave off with part 1. Part 2 will be in the description below. Hope you enjoyed the summary so far, and we'll see you in the next one. Chick Chang out.